He stood in my doorway with a suitcase in one hand and a lawyer in the other, telling me I needed to vacate the house I built. My little brother Eli, the same kid I raised when our parents walked out, the same boy I fed, clothed, and tutored through every heartbreak and failure, was now evicting me from my own life. I gave up college, friendships, and a future to keep him off the streets. And now, with a smug grin and legal paperwork, he called it reclaiming what's fair. The living room still smelled like the meals I cooked for us. But suddenly, everything felt foreign. I didn't lose a home that day. I lost the last illusion that family meant loyalty. He came for my house. He had no idea what he'd started. I didn't say a word as Eli stepped across the threshold. Dragging his suitcase across the hardwood floors, I refinished with my own hands. The same hands that once held his when he was too scared to cross the street. He glanced around like he was sizing up a real estate listing, not the home that held 2 decades of sacrifice. Behind him was a man in a charcoal suit, mid-40s, bored expression, holding a slim black folder, the kind of man you pay when you want something to feel official. Even if it isn't right. Marcus, Eli said, as if we were estranged acquaintances meeting for coffee. I've got a document here. I think it's time we discuss ownership. Ownership. That word hit harder than any insult he could have thrown. For years, I worked myself into the ground to make sure Eli had everything he needed. When Mom ran off with her 3rd boyfriend and Dad vanished into some rehab program he never finished, I was 17, barely a man, suddenly raising a kid. I didn't finish college. I didn't go on trips. I took a job in construction during the day and waited tables at night, all to pay for Eli's school lunches, his braces, his SAT prep. I gave him my bedroom, my car, my life. Now he was giving me a deadline. The lawyer, Mr. Halpern, cleared his throat. Mr. Mercer. My client is filing for partial claim over this property based on his financial contributions and verbal agreements made during the course of residency. We're prepared to go to mediation. But Eli believes a private discussion would be more civil. They always use that word when they're about to gut you with a smile. I motioned toward the couch. Not because I was being polite, but because I needed to sit before my knees buckled. Eli didn't sit. He stood, arms crossed, like a boss scolding a low-level employee. His body was different now, taller, broader, but his eyes still carried that same shadow of boyhood fear. Only now, it was buried beneath arrogance and entitlement. You said once, he started, that this was our house. You said I'd always have a place here. I said you'd always have a home, I replied. I didn't say you could take it from me. He flinched. Just a little, then doubled down. I paid utilities. I helped fix the fence. I paid half the property taxes last year, with the money I gave you. He looked away. This wasn't about the house. Not really. It was about control. About finally flipping the dynamic he resented that I'd always been the responsible one. The caretaker. The adult. He didn't want the walls. He wanted what they represented: power, independence, revenge. Why now, I asked. Quietly. Why this way? He shrugged, like it was a business move. You've been acting like it's all yours, deciding things without asking me, making renovations, talking like I'm just a tenant. You are a tenant, I said, each word slicing like glass, and one who hasn't paid rent in 8 months. That got him. His jaw tightened. I thought you'd understand. I thought after everything, you'd see this as fair. Fair. That word again. Fair was watching your teenage years slip away while you're learning how to sign school permission slips and budget for groceries. Fair was taking jobs you hated because a kid needed shoes. Fair was sitting through parent-teacher conferences pretending to be someone's father because no one else showed up. And now, the boy I saved wanted to evict me. I stood slowly, walked to the kitchen, and poured a glass of water, mostly to hide the trembling in my hands. My voice was calm when I spoke again. Eli, if you want a legal fight, you'll get one. But let me make one thing clear before we go down that road. He blinked. This house is in my name. I bought it. I've paid for every nail, every screw, every mortgage check. You want to fight me for it? Fine. But don't think for 1 second that I'll back down. He stared at me, unsure for the first time since walking in. Because you're not just coming for my house. I said, you're coming for everything I sacrificed to make sure you even had a chance. The silence stretched, brittle and loaded. The lawyer began flipping papers. Eli looked like he wanted to say something, maybe explain, maybe retreat, but the damage was done. You can't take the heart out of something and expect it to keep beating. And I was done bleeding for people who mistook love for leverage. He left with the lawyer 30 minutes later, the door clicking shut with the finality of a gavel. No apology, no hesitation, just the rustle of legal folders and the dull thud of entitlement walking down the porch steps. I watched from the living room window, arms crossed tight, the air thick with what he didn't say. I didn't move for a while, just stood there, staring at the place where his car had been parked right in the driveway. I shoveled snow from every winter, where we once chalked hopscotch grids when he was 6, where he learned to ride a bike without training wheels. It had always been our place. Now it felt like a battleground. That night, I barely slept. The silence in the house wasn't peaceful. It buzzed with old memories and fresh betrayal. I sat at the kitchen table with a legal pad and started writing everything down: dates, bank transfers, receipts, the adoption papers I never signed, but the school letters that listed me as guardian, all the invisible lines I'd crossed to keep that boy afloat. The next morning, I went to see Judith. Judith ran the diner where I worked weekends for extra cash. She was in her 60s. Silver hair, always twisted up with a pencil jammed through it like a pin. She'd known me since I was a kid, and she was the first person I told when Mom left and took the dog, but not her children, Marcus Mercer. She said as I walked in, "You look like hell warmed over and slapped with a cold spoon. Thanks." Jude. She poured me a cup of coffee without asking and sat down across from me. Arms folded. "Is it Eli?" I nodded. She waited. I told her everything about the lawyer, the papers, the claim to the house. Halfway through, she stopped me and said, "Wait, you raised this kid, and now he wants to take your home. He says he contributed. To what?" "The milk in the fridge." "Please." Her words cracked something inside me that I hadn't even realized was still intact dignity. She saw the injustice of it so plainly. No soft edges, no benefit of the doubt. "You listen to me, honey," she said, voice low and firm. "You didn't just give him a roof. You gave him roots. And if he wants to twist that into something he's owed, that's on him. But don't you dare let him take what you built." I didn't cry in front of Judith. I never did. But that night, after washing dishes at the diner and driving home under the streetlights, I sat on the edge of my bed and let it happen. Not the messy kind of sobbing, but the quiet kind. The kind where your whole body shudders. And the tears come slow, like the release of a dam you didn't know was cracking. I wasn't crying just because of the betrayal. I was crying because I saw it coming. Eli had changed in the past few years, slicker, sharper, more distant. He used to call me every other day when he moved out for college. But after graduation, the calls stopped. He only came around when something needed fixing or a favor needed doing. I made excuses, said he was busy, adjusting to adulthood. But now I saw it clearly. I had taught him to rely on me, but never to respect me. That's what cut the deepest. I started pulling documents the next day, bank statements, insurance records, the notarized title. I emailed a friend of a friend who'd handled property disputes before. He called me back within hours. "You've got this. Marcus," he said, "it's going to be ugly, but it's winnable." Ugly. I stared at the word in my notes like it had teeth. Because what was uglier than watching the person you loved most turn into someone you couldn't trust? Still, I had one thing Eli didn't expect resolve. He thought I'd fold, that I'd do what I always did, give in to keep the peace, that I'd surrender the house just to keep the illusion of family intact. But I wasn't 17 anymore. I wasn't scared. I was tired, and that made me dangerous. Because a man who's given up everything has nothing left to lose. And I was just getting started. The notice arrived on a Thursday. Slipped through the mail slot like a snake, quiet, deliberate, venomous, a formal request for mediation. Eli's name printed neatly at the top next to the words, "Party in dispute." My hands trembled as I held it, not because I was scared, not anymore, but because it was real now, no longer an emotional wound, but a legal war. I didn't even have to read the whole thing to know what it meant he was going through with it. He wanted to fight me for the house I raised him in. I sat on the porch for an hour with that letter in my lap, the evening breeze brushing against my face like it was trying to soothe me, but it didn't work. The rage was rising, low and steady, like floodwater. I wasn't mad at the letter. I was mad at the years it took to see Eli for what he'd become. Judith showed up that evening with a casserole and a bottle of bourbon, which told me she already knew. Got a little heads up from Cheryl, she said, placing the food on the table. Her niece works at the law office he's using. Said your name came up. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. He really thinks he can take it. I said, as if it was ever his. Judith poured 2 glasses and sat across from me. Eyes steady. You're gonna have to dig deep now. Marcus, this isn't just about keeping your house. It's about making peace with how you raised him. And how he turned out anyway. That stung, but it was the truth. Mediation was scheduled for the following week. We met in a beige office with framed photos of handshakes and justice scales like the space was trying too hard to look fair. Eli came in wearing a navy suit I'd never seen before. His hair slicked back like he'd borrowed the look from a corporate brochure. His lawyer, a wiry man with a permanent smirk, sat beside him. I didn't bring anyone, just myself. A worn leather folder. And the truth, the mediator explained the process. I barely listened. I was too busy watching Eli, how he avoided my eyes, how his leg bounced under the table, how his lawyer kept nudging him like he was being coached through a math exam. Eli's voice was calm when he spoke rehearsed. He talked about how he had contributed to the property over the years, how he'd helped with repairs, even paid bills on occasion. He said we'd had an informal agreement that the house was for both of us. A family home, not just mine. I said nothing at first. Let the silence do the work. Then I pulled out the receipts, the mortgage in my name, the title, the notarized loan payoffs, a list of every dollar I had spent on the house. From the roof to the wiring to the paint on the walls, he never offered to help roll on. The mediator looked between us, frowning slightly. So, Mr. Mercer, she said to me, your position is that this house was always yours, legally and otherwise. No, I replied. Legally, yes. Emotionally, it was ours. But I was the only one who treated it that way. Eli's jaw clenched. I raised him here. I continued. I gave him every bit of stability I didn't get growing up. I never asked for thanks, but I sure as hell didn't expect betrayal. His lawyer tried to interrupt, but I kept going. I was never the kind of man who demanded respect, but I earned it, and I'll be damned if I let him steal the roof over my head after everything I gave up for him. The mediator nodded slowly. The session ended with no resolution, just a note that both parties were encouraged to seek independent judgment. In the hallway outside, Eli finally looked at me. You're really going to fight me on this. I already am. I said, and I'm not the one losing. He stared for a moment, and for the first time in years, I saw a flicker of doubt in his eyes. Not guilt, not regret, just the realization that I wasn't going to bend. I turned and walked away, not looking back. He could chase the idea of inheritance all he wanted, but I had already claimed something far more valuable, my dignity. The night after mediation, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the kitchen long after the bourbon ran out. Just me, a ticking clock, and a house that suddenly felt both heavier and more alive than ever. Every creak of the floorboard, every scrape of wind against the old windows reminded me I had built this place with my own hands, sacrificed pieces of my youth for its foundation. And now my own brother was trying to wrench it out from under me like I was just a squatter in my own life. By morning, something in me had hardened. I'd tried being quiet. I'd tried understanding. I'd even tried letting go. None of it worked. So I called my lawyer. I'm done waiting. I said, if he wants a fight, I'll give him one. We filed a formal response and counterclaim that same week. Not just denying his request, but laying bare every attempt Eli had made to manipulate me over the years. My lawyer didn't sugarcoat it. This might get ugly, he warned. I told him it already was. Word got around faster than I expected. Small towns don't keep secrets. By Sunday, I couldn't go to the diner without someone stopping me, patting my shoulder, shaking their head, offering half-whispered sympathy or outright rage on my behalf. But there were others too. People who had always favored Eli's charm over my steadiness. Folks who said things like, maybe he just needs a little help, Marcus. Or, he's your brother, you only get one. And to that, I wanted to say, I didn't get a brother. I got a responsibility disguised as love. I got guilt wrapped in birthdays and hand-me-down dreams. Judith came over that evening with a stack of papers she'd found in her garage, old photos, report cards, drawings we'd made as kids. One was a Father's Day card Eli had made for me when he was 9. Crayon letters, crooked and bold. You're the best dad bro ever. I stared at it for a long time, longer than I wanted to, because buried under all the anger, there was still grief, not just for what I was losing now, but for what I had once believed we had. I think he loved you once, Judith said, gently. I think he loved what I could give him, I replied. That week, the house became my fortress. I started fixing things I had long ignored, repainting the porch, repairing the fence, replacing the broken step Eli always said he'd get to. I wasn't doing it for him anymore. I was doing it for me, for the man who'd earned every inch of this place with calloused hands and late-night shifts. Then came the phone call from Mom. She hadn't called in months, not when the mediation started, not when she found out about the lawsuit. She'd stayed quiet, like she always did when Eli messed up, letting me be the bad guy while she hid behind the word neutral. Marcus, she said softly, I heard about the court stuff. Maybe we can sit down, talk like a family. Now you want to talk? I asked, my voice brittle. He's your brother, she said. Already on script. No, I replied. He's your son, and you've always made it clear that means more. She didn't argue, just sighed. You've always been so strong, she whispered, as if it were a compliment, as if that strength didn't come from being left to hold the weight alone. Yeah, I said, and I'm tired. I hung up before she could speak again. I went outside and sat on the steps, watching the sun bleed into the horizon like it was dragging the whole world down with it. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like I had to brace for someone else's disaster. It was just me, my silence, and the echo of a decision I had already made. Eli could have the past, the stories, the excuses. I was keeping the future, and I was done asking for permission to live it. The morning of the hearing, I didn't dress to impress. I wore what I always wore, clean jeans, a button-down shirt, boots with scuffed toes and soles worn thin from years on concrete. I wasn't there to perform. I was there to finish what I started. The courthouse was quiet. Too quiet. Eli hadn't arrived yet. His lawyer stood near the bench, shuffling papers and glancing at the door like he expected a storm to walk through it. I sat down, hands folded, heart steady, not because I wasn't angry, but because I had already bled every ounce of that emotion dry. When Eli did walk in, he looked nothing like the boy I raised. The swagger was there, sure, but it was forced. Sitting stiff under a suit that didn't quite fit, his hair was slicked back, jaw clenched like he was chewing through his own story. He didn't look at me. Not once. The judge began with the facts. Deed, tax history, mortgage, renovations. I had documentation for everything. My name was on every line. Eli had nothing, no payments, no contracts, not even a single utility bill, just his word and the shaky claim that our dad would have wanted us to share. I nearly laughed. If Dad wanted us to share, he should have raised us the same. Eli's lawyer droned on about family, hardship, equity of love. I watched the judge's brow furrow deeper with each sentence. Like even he couldn't follow the leap from my brother owns this house to. But I deserve it too. Then it was my turn. I didn't give a speech. I didn't cry. I didn't even look at Eli. I bought that house when I was 32. I said, I worked every shift I could. I fixed it up myself. I paid every bill, every tax, every emergency. My brother has never lived there. He's never paid a dime. And now he's asking the court to give him a piece of something he didn't build. Silence hung heavy. The judge leaned forward, fingers laced together. Thank you, Mr. Mercer, he said. I've heard enough. We didn't wait long. The ruling was firm. The house belonged solely to me. Eli had no legal claim. Any attempt to return or harass would be considered trespassing. I exhaled slowly as the words settled over the room like a final nail hammered into an old, rusted coffin. Eli didn't explode. He didn't cry. He just turned to me and said, "You're not family anymore." I stood, looked him in the eyes, and said, "I was never treated like I was." That was the last time I saw him. The weeks after the ruling were strangely quiet. No calls from Mom, no sudden visits, no backhanded texts asking me to forgive and forget. It was like a door had finally closed, and this time, I didn't feel the need to wedge it back open. I started to rebuild in small ways. New paint in the hallway, a garden out front. I built a bookshelf in the den, stacked with novels I'd been meaning to read for years, but never had the time or peace to open. Judith came by with dinner once a week. And sometimes we sat on the porch with beers and silence and that rare, heavy stillness that feels like healing. One day in early spring, I found a small envelope in my mailbox. No return address. Inside was a photograph faded, bent at the corners. It was me and Eli. Back when he was 7, I was holding his bike steady while he learned to ride. He was grinning, gap-toothed and wild, and I looked like I believed he could fly. No note, just the photo. I didn't cry. I just stood there a while. The photo in one hand, the keys to my house in the other. He was part of my past. But this was my life now, and I was finally living it on my own terms. Sometimes the hardest part of growing up isn't paying bills or fixing leaky roofs. It's realizing that love doesn't always come with fairness, and family doesn't always mean respect. This story isn't just about a house. It's about boundaries, sacrifice, and reclaiming what's rightfully yours when the people closest to you try to strip it away. Marcus spent his whole life being the dependable one, the fixer, the silent protector, the big brother who gave everything so someone else could shine. But even the strongest shoulders have limits, and when those you love most confuse loyalty with ownership, standing up for yourself isn't selfish, it's survival. Many of us have felt the sting of being overlooked or used. especially by those we thought would always be in our corner. But as Marcus learned, peace isn't found in keeping everyone else happy. It's found in finally choosing yourself. Have you ever had to walk away from someone to protect your peace? Your story matters. Tell us in the comments. We read everyone. And if Marcus's journey touched something in you, hit the like button and subscribe for more stories that honor strength, truth, and the power of standing tall when it counts most. You are not alone.